The first thing I noticed was the silence. No alarms yet, no shouting, just a strange pause in the air, like the hospital was holding its breath. Then the lights flickered once. Twice. Down the corridor, a thin ribbon of smoke curled from under the fire door, slow and deliberate, as if it had time. People kept walking, phones in hands. A nurse laughed at something on a screen. I was just an aide in gray scrubs, pushing a linen cart, invisible by design. A man in a torn uniform shirt stumbled out of trauma bay 2, pilot wings still pinned to his chest, eyes sharp despite the blood at his hairline. He looked right through me, then past me, searching for someone in charge. Behind him, the first scream hit, and that quiet ribbon of smoke became a wave. I didn't run, I didn't shout. I looked at the floor plan on the wall, counted doors, measured distance with my eyes, then I started moving staff like pieces on a board. The pilot finally turned back, confused, like he just realized the wrong person had been ignoring. They thought I was only an aide. They were wrong. The hospital at night had its own weather. Not the kind you could see through a window, more like pressure in the hallways, a constant hum that never fully stopped. Ventilation fans, distant wheels on linoleum. Voices clipped short by fatigue. Somewhere, an IV pump complained in a thin, repeating tone, and nobody hurried because the sound had become part of the building's language. She moved through it in gray scrubs that did not carry rank. Not a nurse's navy. Not a doctor's white coat. Gray, like the walls, like the carts, like the shadows between fluorescent panels. Patient care aide. The title sounded small on paper. In practice, it meant she did the work everyone else depended on and rarely saw. Her badge sat flat on her chest, first name only. No credentials after it, no hint of anything. She pushed a linen cart down the corridor with both hands, slow enough that the wheels didn't squeal. The cart was full, but her grip never tightened. Her shoulders stayed low. She didn't look hurried. She didn't look like someone about to become important. At the intersection near trauma, she stopped for half a beat, not because she needed to, because she always did. Left. The main corridor to the lobby, glass doors, bright signage, the easiest way out when everything was normal. Right, a service hallway marked staff only, dimmer, quieter, with the kind of doors that closed heavy and latched clean. Straight, the nurses' station, the central spine of the floor, where people spoke in codes and called out names like numbers. Her eyes touched the wall map, one glance, no more, and moved on. Most people used that map when they were lost. She used it the way a person used a mirror before leaving home, confirmation. Her name was Lena. No one called her Ms. or officer or anything that implied distance. It was always just Lena if they remembered at all. A nurse in navy scrubs hurried past, ponytail swinging, phone pressed to her ear. "Yeah, he's still waiting," she said, not to Lena, not to anyone on the floor. "He's mad." Of course he's mad. She didn't slow. Lena kept pushing. Near the trauma bays, the air was cooler, not much, just enough to register. She felt it on her forearms, the small exposed strip of skin above her gloves. The temperature shift meant an exterior door had opened recently or a vent had surged. Hospitals were full of these tiny tells. People stopped noticing. She never had. At Bay 2, a curtain half drawn, a man sat on the edge of a gurney like he'd been told to sit and had refused to fully comply. He wore a white uniform shirt under a jacket that had been thrown on without care. His hair was damp at the temples. A shallow cut at his hairline had been cleaned but not dressed the way he wanted. Pinned to his shirt were wings. He was not a patient who melted into the room. He occupied it like a schedule. "Excuse me," he said, the moment he saw movement in the hall. The tone had the sharp edge of someone used to being answered. "Hey, you." Lena stopped the cart, turned her head just enough to make eye contact. "Yes." He looked at her badge, then away, as if the information confirmed something unhelpful. "How long does it take to get a doctor in here?" "I can check the board," she said. "I've been checked twice," he replied. "I don't need sympathy, I need a timeline." She didn't flinch at the word sympathy. She didn't offer any. Her face stayed calm, neutral. The kind of expression that didn't give people anything to fight. "What's your name?" he asked, as if he might use it later in a complaint. "Lena." He held on to it for a second, then released it. "Lena, I'm not trying to be difficult. I have a duty cycle. I'm supposed to be." He stopped, then tried again, calmer. I need to know what's happening. Lena's eyes flicked to his hands. Clean nails, fine tremor at the fingers, adrenaline wearing down, trying to settle. She watched his breathing without making it obvious. He wasn't short of air, not truly, he was carrying panic on a strap. Someone will speak with you, she said. I'll ask the charge nurse. He gave a short laugh that wasn't humor. The charge nurse told me to wait like everyone else. You know what happens when people wait like everyone else in an emergency? Lena didn't answer. She didn't need to. He looked at her again, searching for a reaction, anger, fear, apology, anything to confirm the hierarchy he expected. She gave him none. I'll ask, she repeated, and she did. She pushed the cart 2 meters, parked it without blocking the hall, and stepped to the nurse's station with the same controlled pace. It wasn't slow. It wasn't fast. It was deliberate. At the station, the charge nurse was mid-conversation, one hand over the receiver, the other tracing notes on a clipboard. Her eyes were tired but sharp. Her voice carried the authority of someone holding too many lives at once. Lena, she said when she saw her, and it wasn't dismissive. It was acknowledgement. What is it? The pilot in Bay 2 is asking for an update, Lena said. The charge nurse's mouth tightened. Of course he is. Lena didn't smile, she didn't agree, she just stood. I'll get someone to talk to him, the nurse said, already turning back to her call. He can wait. People who can't wait should not come to a hospital. Lena nodded once and stepped back. As she turned, she saw 2 residents moving down the hall, heads close together, speaking in shorthand. Behind them, a respiratory therapist pushed a portable oxygen tank, focused on the patient chart clipped to the handle. Routine. The building was doing what it always did, absorbing chaos in small, controlled doses. Lena returned to her cart. She adjusted the top stack of linens by touch, flattening a corner, aligning edges, a small habit, a quiet anchor. Then she paused, not because of the pilot. Not because of the nurses, because something in the air had changed. It was faint at first, more an absence than a presence. The ventilation hum seemed to dip for half a second, then resume. A tiny stutter, like a skipped breath. Her gaze drifted upward to the ceiling vents. Nothing visible, no flashing, no alarms, but she caught it anyway, the scent, not the clean sting of disinfectant, not stale coffee, something warmer, dry, like dust heated too long. Her hand moved to the wall automatically, not to lean but to feel. The paint was cool, normal. She let her fingers rest there for a beat, then lifted them away. The hospital map was still a few steps behind her. She looked back at it again, longer this time, and traced a path in her mind that wasn't the one people took when everything was fine. When she turned, the pilot was still sitting upright in Bay 2, watching the hall, watching anyone who looked like they might be useful. He caught her eye again and lifted his chin, impatient. Lena gave him the smallest nod, not reassurance, not submission. Just confirmation that she had registered him. Then the lights flickered once, just a blink. A nurse nearby looked up, annoyed, as if the building had interrupted her. Someone muttered about maintenance. Nobody moved. Lena did not move either. She listened. In that half-second after the flicker, before the noise returned to normal, the hospital went quiet in a way it shouldn't. Silence like a warning held at the back of the throat. Lena's eyes shifted to the nearest fire door, then to the stairwell, then to the ceiling again. She took one step closer to the wall map, as if she were simply checking a room number. Her fingers touched the edge of the plastic frame, and she waited, still, calm, unseen, while the building decided whether it was about to change. The light steadied again as if nothing had happened. A few staff glanced up, annoyed at the inconvenience, then returned to their screens, their charts, their routines. In a hospital, a flicker was never the most urgent thing in the room. Not when someone was vomiting in a bathroom, not when a monitor was alarming. Not when a family was crying quietly behind a curtain. Lena let the moment pass without comment, not because she didn't care, because she did. Because she had learned that if you spoke too early, people heard emotion instead of information. They dismissed the messenger to avoid dealing with the message. So she moved. She pushed her cart toward the service hallway, the staff-only corridor that ran parallel to the main route like a hidden vein. The door's hinge resisted in a familiar way. She held it open with her shoulder and slipped through, listening as it latched behind her with a clean, heavy click. The difference inside that hallway was immediate. The air felt stiller, denser, not warmer, not yet, but wrong in a way that made the skin on her forearms tight. She didn't breathe deep. She took small, controlled breaths, like she was testing the room rather than entering it. Halfway down, a door to a stairwell sat flush in the wall. It wasn't labeled for patients. It wasn't meant for crowds. It was the kind of stairwell used by staff moving between floors, by supply runners, by security. Lena set the cart's brake and placed her palm on the stairwell door. The metal was slightly warm, not hot, not enough that anyone would recoil. Enough that it didn't match the air around it. Her eyes lifted to the door's edges. The seam, the latch, a faint discoloration at the bottom corner where the paint had been touched too often. She watched for smoke, for a draft, for anything visible. Nothing. She leaned in, close enough that her ear nearly touched the door, and listened. At first, only the hospital's baseline noise, distant pumps, ventilation, the occasional clang of a cart. Then, beneath it, something else. A low vibration. Intermittent, like a fan struggling, like a motor catching. Lena straightened slowly. She didn't yank the door open. Curiosity killed people in places like this, people and protocols. If there was smoke on the other side, opening that door could feed it oxygen and pull it into the corridor. Instead, she stepped back and scanned the ceiling. A vent above the stairwell door showed a thin, uneven shimmer in the air, like heat rising off pavement, so subtle most eyes would never pick it up. Her gaze returned to the wall map in her memory. Alternate routes, fire doors, oxygen lines. She left her cart where it was and walked back to the main corridor without running. In the nurse's station, the charge nurse was still managing a dozen conversations at once. Phone on shoulder, pen moving, a resident asking a question she didn't have time to answer. Two nurses stood nearby comparing medication times. Nobody was idle. Everyone was stretched thin. Lena waited for a gap. "Charge," she said softly. The nurse looked up, already tense. "What?" "The staff stairwell off the service corridor feels warm," Lena said. "And I'm hearing a motor strain, like an exhaust fan failing. Air feels heavy in there." The nurse blinked once, the kind of blink that meant she was filtering Lena's words through 1,000 competing emergencies. "Facilities has been behind for months," she said, not unkindly, but dismissive by necessity. "We had a vent issue last week. Put in a ticket." "I think it's more than a vent," Lena replied. The nurse's eyes narrowed. "Do you see smoke?" "No." "Do you have an alarm?" "No." "Then put in a ticket," the nurse said, and her voice softened by a degree, as if she recognized Lena's effort but couldn't afford to follow it. "I'm not ignoring you, Lena. I'm triaging." Lena nodded. She didn't argue. She didn't show frustration. She understood triage better than most people in this building would ever guess. "I'll call facilities myself," Lena said. "Fine," the nurse replied, already turning away. "Just don't start a panic." Lena stepped back into the corridor. The pilot in Bay 2 was on his feet now, one hand braced against the bed rail as if he were restraining himself from pacing the entire floor. When he saw her, he lifted a hand. "Hey, Lena, any update?" "There will be," she said. "That's what everyone keeps saying." His eyes flicked over her face, searching. "You okay? You look like you smelled something." "I'm fine," Lena answered, which was true, in the narrow sense. He gave a humorless exhale. "I'm not trying to be rude, but this place feels unprepared, like no one's driving the plane." Lena's gaze held his for half a second too long, not hostile, assessing. Then she looked past him toward the corridor intersections, toward doors and signage, toward where people would run if they were suddenly afraid. "The hospital runs," she said quietly. "It runs," he echoed, skeptical. Lena didn't correct him. She turned away, walked to the wall phone near the supply alcove, and dialed the internal number for facilities. It rang. Once, twice. A tired voice answered. "Facilities." "This is Lena, Aide on trauma floor," she said. Her voice stayed calm, crisp. "I need someone to check the staff stairwell off the service corridor. Door feels warm. Ventilation sounds strained. Possible mechanical overheating." A pause, the kind where someone decided whether to treat her as credible. "You put in a ticket?" the voice asked. Yes, Lena lied without changing her tone. Another pause. We're short tonight, facilities said. We'll get there when we can. Not when you can, Lena replied, still calm. Now, if that motor fails, it could feed smoke into our floor. We're running oxygen, we have immobile patients, and our primary egress routes will choke first. Silence on the line, the facility's worker swallowed audibly. Okay, I'll send someone. Thank you, Lena said and hung up. She didn't wait for relief to wash over her. She didn't trust relief. Instead, she started moving the small things, quietly, without announcement. She walked to the closest crash cart, checked that it wasn't parked in a spot that would block a gurney path. She nudged it 5 inches to the side. No one noticed. A nurse glanced at her and assumed she was doing routine housekeeping. She stepped into a storage closet, checked that the spare wheelchairs weren't wedged behind boxes. She pulled 3 out and lined them against the wall in a clean row, angled toward the corridor like they were waiting for a patient transport order. She checked the nearest fire door in the main corridor, pressing it open and letting it close to confirm it latched properly. 1, 2, 3 doors, no drama, no words. In Bay 2, the pilot watched her for a moment, his impatience interrupted by confusion. What are you doing? He called. Making space, Lena replied without looking at him. For what? He demanded. Lena paused by the wall map again. Her fingers touched the frame lightly. Her eyes traced the printed exits and the lines between them. For movement, she said. The pilot frowned. Movement like evacuation? Maybe, Lena answered. Is something happening? His voice lifted, sharper now, the edges of fear showing. Lena turned and met his eyes again. Not yet. The pilot stepped out of Bay 2, closer to the corridor. Then why are you acting like it is? Because you don't wait for the smoke to teach you the routes, Lena thought, but she didn't say that. Because when it happens, she said instead, people don't think. They run toward what they remember, and what they remember is usually wrong. He stared at her as if he didn't know what to do with that. Just then, from somewhere deeper in the building, a muffled thud rolled through the floor, soft enough that only someone listening for it would hear. A distant impact, not a crash, not a dropped tray, a pressure change. Lena felt it in her bones. The pilot didn't react. He was still looking at her, waiting for her to explain herself. Lena's eyes shifted past him to the service corridor door. She didn't move fast. She didn't shout. She simply reached out, stopped a passing nurse with a gentle hand on the forearm, and guided her cart to the side, clearing the corridor. The nurse opened her mouth to ask why. Lena gave her a look, steady, calm, wordless. The nurse closed her mouth and complied. Lena turned back to the pilot. Go sit down, she said, not harshly, and keep your shoes on. He blinked. What? Shoes, Lena repeated. Now. He hesitated, then stepped back into the bay as if the simplest order had somehow carried weight he couldn't name. Lena walked toward the service hallway again, every step controlled, her mind already mapping the building like a grid. The crisis hadn't arrived, but it was close enough now that she could feel its breath at the edge of the lights. The service hallway door opened with the same heavy resistance as before. Lena slipped through, and the air met her like a warning. It wasn't just warm now. It had thickness. A faint bite at the back of the throat, dry and chemical, like plastic beginning to surrender. The corridor lights were still on, but they felt dimmer, as if the air itself was swallowing them. She stopped 3 steps in. The stairwell door, metal, plain, built for constant use, was warmer than it had been minutes ago, not hot enough to burn. Hot enough to prove that whatever was happening on the other side was escalating. Her hand hovered near the latch. She didn't touch it. Instead, she lowered her face slightly and watched the seam at the bottom of the door. A thread of smoke pushed out, thin as hair. Not a billow, not dramatic. A patient, steady leak. Lena's breath stayed small. She turned her head, listening. The low vibration she'd heard earlier was gone. That was worse. A motor struggling made noise. A motor that had stopped struggling meant it had either been shut off or it had failed. She pivoted toward the ceiling vent above the door. The shimmer was stronger now, and in it, barely visible, darkening particles that moved with the air current. Smoke. Lena backed up 2 steps, reached for her radio, then remembered she didn't have one. Aides weren't issued radios unless a supervisor felt generous. She moved back to the door, pressed her palm flat against the wall beside it, and felt the vibration travel through the structure. The building was alive, and somewhere below, something was eating. Then the thud came again, closer, heavier, not imagined this time. The floor beneath her shoes trembled as if a distant giant had dropped a shoulder into a wall. A beat of silence. Then a sound that did not belong to normal hospital night shift. Alarms waking up one by one, hesitant at first, then multiplying. A chirp, a shrill beep, another, a chorus building, catching up to reality. The lights flickered. This time they didn't recover cleanly. They dimmed, surged, then fell into emergency brightness, the harsh, backup glow that made everything look flatter and more dangerous. Lena did not freeze. She did not run. She turned and walked back into the main corridor with the same controlled pace she'd used minutes ago. But now every step had a purpose. The first person she met was a young nurse pushing a med cart, eyes wide, scanning the ceiling like she expected it to fall. "What's going on?" the nurse asked, voice already rising. "Where are your patients?" Lena replied instead. The nurse blinked. "What? Which rooms need help moving?" Lena repeated, calm, precise. "Give me numbers." The nurse's mouth opened, closed, then she shook her head like she didn't know. Lena didn't wait for panic to settle. She walked to the nurse's station. The charge nurse was already standing. The phone had been dropped into its cradle. Her face had changed, less fatigue, more calculation. "We have smoke somewhere," the nurse said, voice loud enough to cut through staff chatter. "I need." Lena stepped in close, lowered her voice so only the charge nurse could hear. "Smoke is coming through the staff stairwell off the service corridor," Lena said. "Door seam is leaking. The motor noise stopped, likely failed ventilation. It's below us." The nurse's eyes locked onto Lena's in a sharp, startled way. "You saw it?" "Yes." The charge nurse inhaled, then snapped into motion. Okay. She raised her voice. "Listen up. We're moving non-critical away from the service side. Respiratory, get your vented patients stabilized. Security, clear the corridor." Security? The word brought two uniformed guards hustling from the lobby end, one already speaking into a radio, and with them, like a bad echo, came the pilot. He was out of Bay 2 now, shoulders squared, eyes alert, injury forgot. The sound of alarms had flipped something in him. He moved like someone who knew what emergencies did to crowds. He stepped into the station space as if it belonged to him. "Okay," he said loudly, cutting over the charge nurse's instructions. "Everybody needs to stay calm. We should use the main corridor to the lobby, keep people together, move in one direction." "No." Lena didn't look at him first. She looked past him. Because in the main corridor, at the far end, a gray haze had begun to appear, smoke drifting in low, creeping like tidewater under doors. It wasn't thick enough yet to trigger coughing. It was thick enough to tell her that the main corridor to the lobby was already being compromised. The charge nurse looked where Lena looked and faltered for half a second. The pilot kept talking. "We can't have staff running around. We need one person directing. You," he pointed toward the charge nurse, then toward Lena as if she were part of the furniture. "You should get on the intercom and tell people." "Stop," Lena said. It wasn't shouted. It was quiet, direct, and it cut through the pilot's words because it wasn't competing. It was placed. The pilot blinked, caught off guard that the command had come from someone in gray scrubs. Lena stepped closer to the wall map by the station. Her eyes traced the routes again, faster now, integrating what she'd just seen, smoke intrusion from the service corridor, drift toward the main hall. She turned to the charge nurse. "Close the fire doors between trauma and the lobby corridor," Lena said. "Now, seal the smoke away from the patient bays. Use the east service corridor as primary movement." The charge nurse stared at her. "East corridor has badge access doors." "I can open them," Lena said. The pilot scoffed reflexively. "You can open secure doors? Are you security now?" Lena didn't dignify it with an answer. She stepped to the side, intercepted a respiratory therapist pushing an oxygen tank toward the hazy corridor. "Not that way," Lena said, guiding the therapist's hands on the tank handle with a subtle shift. "We're going to Bay 4, the therapist protested. "Bay 4 stays," Lena replied. "Move Bay 3 first. Bay 4 can't go through smoke, Bay 3 can." "That's not your call," the therapist said, but their voice wavered, unsure. Lena's eyes met theirs. There was no threat in her gaze, only certainty. "Look down the hall," Lena said. The therapist looked. Saw the haze, felt the first faint bite of it. Then the therapist nodded once and turned the tank around. The charge nurse finally moved, snapping orders into motion like dominoes. "Close those fire doors," she shouted. "Now, RT prioritize portable vents. CNA team, start moving ambulatory patients east." "Security get the stairwell status?" Security responded automatically to her rank, but their eyes kept flicking to Lena now, because Lena was already moving. She walked straight to the staff-only door at the end of the east corridor. A keypad, a badge scanner, a heavy latch. A nurse behind her called, "That door doesn't open without admin." Lena didn't answer. She tapped her badge once. The light blinked green, the door clicked. It was a small sound, barely audible under alarms, but it changed the air around her. A few heads turned. A few mouths tightened. People filed that away without understanding it. The pilot saw it too. His expression shifted. He stepped forward slower now. "Who are you?" he asked, and the anger in his voice was gone, replaced by something sharper. Lena opened the door and held it for the first wave of staff moving patients and equipment through the alternative route. "I'm the person keeping you from walking everyone into smoke," she said, calm as ever. Behind them, the fire doors began to close, separating sections of the corridor with heavy, sealing thuds. And then the smoke surged. Not in the main hall yet, not fully, but in the service corridor, it pressed harder, eager for oxygen, searching for the easiest path. The hospital's alarms now screamed without hesitation. People began to run. A patient family member stumbled into the corridor, crying, trying to find a room number. A nurse chased after them. Another shouted, "Don't go that way." The pilot turned toward the lobby end, instinct trying to pull him into command mode. Lena touched his forearm, 2 fingers, light pressure. He froze, startled by the restraint more than the touch. "Don't," Lena said. "People need," he started. "They need roots," Lena corrected, "not speeches." He stared at her hand, then at her face. For the first time, he saw what had been there all along. She wasn't reacting to chaos. She was reading it, mapping it, and moving people through it like she'd done it before, somewhere else, in a different kind of building, under a different kind of threat. Lena released his arm and stepped forward into the flow of bodies, her voice low but carrying. "East corridor only. Stay off the main hall. Keep oxygen away from smoke. Move with the wall, don't stop in doorways." Staff began to repeat it, not because she had a title, because the instructions worked. And as the building filled with that dry, rising heat, the pilot, still bleeding, still wearing his wings, stood in Bay 2's doorway and realized he had mistaken her for background. He had mistaken the quiet for weakness. The smoke kept coming, and Lena kept moving. The corridor had become a river. Not fast yet, not a flood, but a steady current of bodies, carts, wheelchairs, oxygen tanks, everything a hospital tried to keep organized now forced into motion at the same time. Alarms screamed overhead. The emergency lights made faces look pale and unfamiliar. The air carried that dry, tightening scent of heated plastic and dust. It was still breathable, barely, but the bite at the back of the throat told Lena the margin was shrinking. She held the east corridor door with one hand while a nurse pushed a wheelchair through with the other, patient slumped forward, eyes unfocused. A second nurse followed, guiding a portable monitor that beeped with each bump of the wheels. Behind them, a resident hurried with a clipboard like the paper could anchor reality. "Keep your right shoulder to the wall," Lena said, quiet but firm. "No passing, one line." The staff member nearest her repeated it automatically, louder, as if volume created authority. "Right shoulder to the wall." One line, the pattern began, people stopped drifting, they started flowing. That was the first win. It lasted 15 seconds. From the main corridor, the one leading to the lobby, the smoke thickened fast. Not a gentle haze now, but a darker band rolling low, creeping along the floor, feeding on air movement and open doors. Someone shouted, "It's coming this way." A panicked family member burst through a doorway, dragging a teenager by the wrist. "My mother is still in there," she cried, pointing back toward a patient room. "You can't just leave." A nurse tried to stop her. The family member shoved past. The line buckled. Lena stepped forward and raised one hand, not high, not dramatic, just enough. "Stop," she said. The word didn't land on the entire crowd. It landed on the handful of people closest to her, the ones already looking for someone to follow. They stopped. The rest slowed because bodies had nowhere to go. The family member kept pushing. Lena stepped into her path, not blocking like a wall, angled, like a door that only opened one direction. "I understand," Lena said, calm enough to sound almost cold. "Tell me the room number." The woman blinked, thrown by the lack of panic in Lena's voice. Room 14. No, 12. She can't walk." Lena nodded once. "Stay here. Right now you will make it worse by running into smoke." "You don't get to tell me that," the woman snapped, tears streaking down her face. "I do," Lena replied quietly, "because I'm the one keeping the corridor open." The woman opened her mouth to argue again. Then a door somewhere down the main hall burst open, and a thicker roll of smoke poured out like a living thing. 2 nurses coughed instantly. Someone screamed. The teenager clung tighter to the woman's arm. The woman froze. Lena didn't waste the moment. "Name," she said. "What? Your name?" "Farah," the woman whispered. "Farah, listen to me," Lena said, keeping her voice low so it didn't ignite the whole crowd. "If you go into that, you won't help your mother. You'll become another patient. Stay here." "I'm sending a team." Farah stared at her. "Who are you?" Lena didn't answer that. She turned her head slightly and spoke to the nearest nurse, one of the steadier ones, eyes focused despite the alarm. "Call Bay 12. If they can move, they move east now. If they can't, tell them to seal the room and wait for extraction. No one goes alone." The nurse hesitated. "Extraction?" Lena met her eyes. "If smoke cuts us off, that's what it becomes." The nurse swallowed, then nodded and moved. Behind Lena, the pilot stepped out into the flow again, frustration returning as the crowd pressed and stalled. "This is turning into a mess," he said, loud enough to be heard. "You need to clear the lobby route. People will naturally go that way. We should guide them to the main exit, keep it simple." "It's not simple," Lena said, not turning to face him yet. He stepped closer. "You're creating confusion. Half the staff thinks we're evacuating east, half thinks—" Lena finally turned and looked at him fully. His face was tight with effort, trying to be useful, trying to be in control, trying to push a crisis into a shape he recognized. He was brave in the way some people were brave, by taking the front position even when they didn't know the terrain. "The main exit is compromised," Lena said. "Smoke is already in that corridor." "Then we push through it," he insisted. "People can cover their mouths. We can move faster than smoke." "That's not how smoke works," Lena replied. He scoffed again, more defensive than cruel. "I've landed planes with hydraulic failures. I've evacuated cabins full of panicked people. I know how crowds move." Lena's eyes flicked to his pinned wings, then back to his face. "And I know how buildings move," she said. Before he could respond, a senior clinician, a trauma attending with tired eyes and a voice used to being obeyed, came striding down the corridor, coat flaring behind him. "What the hell is going on?" the doctor demanded. "Why is everyone moving into the east corridor? Who authorized this?" The line faltered again. People hesitated, desperate for rank to tell them what to do. The pilot seized the moment. "Doctor, thank God. This is what I'm saying. We need a clear plan. We should move everyone to the lobby exit. Who are you?" The doctor snapped, barely looking at him. "I'm a commercial pilot," he said, as if that should translate to command. The doctor's jaw tightened. "Then go sit down." The pilot flushed, stunned. The doctor turned, eyes finally landing on Lena in gray scrubs like she had no right to be at the center of anything. "And you," he said, sharp, "why are you directing staff? Where is the charge nurse?" Lena didn't argue. She didn't posture. She just pointed. Down the main corridor, through the haze, a fire door had begun to sag at the top seam. Smoke pushed around it in a darker wave, thickening by the second. Behind it in that compromised space, someone, maybe an orderly, maybe a nurse, had opened a door and now staggered backward, coughing violently, eyes watering. The attending followed Lena's gesture and saw it. His confidence shifted. Not broken, adjusted. A split second later, the fire door shuddered as if something pushed against it from the other side. A louder thud. The metal frame vibrated. The The smoke surged around the edges. The attending's eyes widened. "What is that?" he breathed. "A stairwell breach," Lena said. "Or a mechanical fire feeding on airflow. Either way, the main hall is going to choke." The attending stared at her, recalculating. "How do you know?" Another door opened down the hall and a dense wave of smoke spilled out, this time rolling high enough to brush chest level. People backed away, coughing. Someone dropped a clipboard. A patient in a wheelchair began to wheeze. The attending didn't finish his question. Reality answered it. He spun toward the staff. "East corridor, now, move." The words came from his mouth, but they were Lena's plan. That mattered less than the fact that the crowd heard a title and complied. The pilot watched it happen, face tight, pride injured, confusion deepening. Lena didn't look at him. She crouched beside the wheezing patient, adjusted the oxygen tubing with practiced care, and spoke to the nurse pushing the chair. "Slow your pace," Lena said. "Fast movement pulls smoke. We move steady, we move sealed." The nurse nodded, eyes wide. "Okay." The attending stepped closer to Lena, lowering his voice now. "Are we evacuating the floor?" "We're relocating away from smoke," Lena replied. "If fire command orders evacuation, we'll already be positioned." The attending swallowed, then nodded as if he didn't like how much sense it made. He looked toward the pilot, then back to Lena. "Who put you in charge?" Lena's gaze stayed on the corridor, on the choke points, on the doors. "No one," she said. And in that moment, with the alarms screaming and the smoke pressing forward like a tide, the attending realized something uncomfortable. Sometimes the person holding the line wasn't the one with the title. It was the one who understood how to move people before panic moved them. Lena stood and took a breath that tasted faintly of burning insulation. Then she lifted her hand again, small, controlled, and directed the next wave of staff through the east corridor, one steady line at a time. The pilot followed alongside now, quieter, watching how she used the space. And somewhere behind the sealed doors, the building continued to heat. The hospital began to split into zones, not officially, not with signage and announcements, but by instinct, by airflow, by where smoke could and could not reach. The east corridor, once a quiet service route, became a spine. The main hall toward the lobby became something else entirely, a contaminated artery growing darker every minute. Lena walked at the head of the movement without ever calling herself the leader. She kept her voice low. She kept her hands visible. She didn't run because running made others run. She didn't shout because shouting turned information into noise. She spoke in short sentences that fit into the gaps between alarms. "Right wall. Keep moving. Leave the carts. Doors closed behind you." Each instruction created a small pocket of control. Behind her, the pilot moved like someone trying to learn a new cockpit mid-flight. His jaw was clenched, but his eyes were working now, tracking, measuring, comparing. The urgency was still there, but it was no longer driving him to dominate. It was driving him to understand. They reached the first badge access door that would become a choke point. A heavy security door that separated the east corridor from a staff-only junction connecting to ICU overflow and an unused procedural wing. A line of people pressed behind them, wheelchairs and portable monitors clustered tight. Oxygen tanks bumped softly against the wall with each step. Every few seconds, someone coughed. A security guard hurried up, radio crackling in his hand. "This wing is restricted," he said, breathless. "We can't route patients through." Lena didn't argue. She stepped to the panel. "Watch the hinge side," she said to the nurse nearest her. "Keep fingers clear." The nurse obeyed, not even questioning why Lena sounded like she'd issued that warning 1,000 times before. Lena tapped her badge. Green light. The door unlocked with a sharp click, and she pushed it open just wide enough for a wheelchair to pass without scraping. The security guard stared. "How do you have access?" Lena held the door, eyes scanning the line behind her. "Move," she said, ignoring the question. The guard stepped closer, blocking slightly without realizing it. "Ma'am, I need your..." Lena turned her head and looked at him in a way that wasn't threatening, but made him feel the weight of time. "Radio your supervisor," she said. "Tell them we're rerouting through the procedural wing. If you slow this line, you'll answer for the delays." The guard stiffened. "I don't take orders from..." "Then don't," Lena replied calm. "Just step aside." Something in her tone, flat, practiced, unbothered by his uniform, made him move without agreeing to it. He shifted out of the path, jaw tight, radio lifting toward his mouth. The pilot watched the exchange with narrowed eyes, not impressed, concerned. Curious. They moved through the secured junction into a quieter wing. Here, the alarms were still audible but slightly muffled by distance. The air was cleaner. The ceiling lights held steady. The smell of smoke was weaker, present but not biting. People exhaled as if they'd been holding their breath without knowing it. That relief was dangerous. Lena didn't let it spread. She stopped near another wall map, older, faded, meant for staff only. It showed the procedural wing, the connecting stairwells, the service elevator shafts, and most importantly, the exits that didn't lead to the lobby. She studied it for 2 seconds, then turned. "We're making a loop," she said to the charge nurse, who had finally caught up with 2 other staff. The nurse's forehead glistened with sweat. Her voice was hoarse from giving orders. "A loop to where?" the nurse asked. "Away from smoke, toward an exterior exit that isn't feeding the fire," Lena answered. The charge nurse hesitated. "We haven't been told to evacuate." "We haven't been told not to," Lena replied. "And we don't have time to wait for the announcement to catch up." The nurse stared at her, then nodded slowly, grimly, as if making peace with the fact that the aide in gray scrubs had become their best chance. The pilot stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This is exactly what I do," he said, almost to himself. "You're building an alternate route because the obvious one is failing." Lena's eyes flicked to him. "Yes," she said. He swallowed. "How do you know which doors will hold? Which corridors will choke?" Lena didn't answer the question directly. "Because buildings behave," she said, "and people behave, and smoke behaves." It was the closest she came to explanation. A portable monitor beeped sharply behind them, drawing attention to a patient, an older man in a wheelchair, head lolling slightly, skin gray at the lips. A nurse checked his pulse, panic flickering. "His pressure is dropping," the nurse said. "We need ICU now." Lena moved in, crouched at the patient's level, and checked the tubing on the oxygen. Her hands were steady. She adjusted the flow with precise fingers, then looked at the nurse. "Is he vented?" Lena asked. "No, nasal cannula." "Then keep him upright," Lena said. "Don't lay him back. He'll drown in his own secretions if his reflexes are fading." The nurse blinked, startled by the clinical clarity. You're an aide." "I've seen this," Lena said simply. She turned to the charge nurse. "We need a priority list. Vented and immobile first. Ambulatory later. Anyone on high-flow oxygen cannot pass through smoke. We keep them in clean air until fire command gives a clear route." The charge nurse nodded, already pulling a pen from her pocket. "Okay, I'll assign." Lena held up a hand. "Don't over-assign. Give people 1 task each." 2 tasks makes them drop both. The pilot's eyebrows lifted at that. It was cockpit thinking, task saturation management. A nurse nearby whispered to another, "Who is she?" No one answered. Lena walked to a wall-mounted oxygen shutoff panel, marked clearly but rarely touched. She studied it for a beat. "Who has keys to this panel?" she asked. A respiratory therapist lifted a hand. "I do." "Good," Lena said. "You're staying with this line. If smoke breaches this wing, we shut oxygen to the contaminated zone and keep it flowing here." "Oxygen feeds fire." The therapist stared at her. "We can't just shut oxygen. That could—" "We can," Lena said, calm but firm, "if we isolate first. This is how you prevent a fire from accelerating through medical gas lines." The therapist hesitated, then nodded, the fear turning into focus. The pilot stepped closer again, voice low. "You're talking like someone who's trained for this, not like someone improvising." Lena's eyes stayed on the corridor ahead, where the next security door waited. "I'm not improvising," she said. That was all. They moved again, deeper into the procedural wing. The halls were narrower, the doors heavier. The air still clean, but the alarms were louder now, closer, like the crisis had grown teeth and was chewing through the building. At the next junction, they hit a problem. A set of double doors, normally held open, had closed automatically. Beyond them, a stairwell sign pointed down to an exterior exit, but the doors wouldn't budge. A nurse pushed. Nothing. A security keypad flashed red. Lockdown function had engaged automatically, sealing zones to contain threat, Good in theory, disastrous in a fire. People began to stack up behind them. Wheelchairs, IV poles, staff shoulder to shoulder. Pressure built. This was how stampedes started, not with screaming but with space disappearing. The pilot stepped forward, voice rising. "We need to keep moving, people can't just stand here." Lena raised a hand, not to silence him but to slow him. "Don't raise your voice," she said. "You'll spike the crowd." He swallowed and lowered it. "Okay, then what?" Lena stepped to the keypad. She didn't fumble. She didn't try random codes. She touched the panel like she knew what she was looking for. Her badge, a beep, another green light, the lock disengaged. The doors opened. The line surged forward in relief. The pilot stared at her, face tight. "That's not normal access," he murmured. Lena held the door as a nurse pushed the unstable patient through. "It's enough," she said. As the last wheelchair passed, Lena let the doors swing closed again behind them, sealing off the wing. A deliberate choice. Containment. The pilot noticed that too. "You're closing it behind us." "Yes." "Why?" Lena met his eyes for one quiet second. "Because if smoke follows, people die." Then she turned and led them toward the stairwell, toward a route most of them had never used, guided by someone they still thought was only an aide. And above them, somewhere in the heart of the hospital, the fire continued to grow, finding oxygen, finding gaps, testing every door like a predator testing fences. The stairwell smelled wrong before they even opened it. Not smoke, not yet, but the stale, trapped odor of a space that rarely saw traffic. A hint of damp concrete, metal, old paint. Lena pushed the door in and held it wide, letting the first wave through. "Single file," she said. "No passing, hand on the rail, slow is fast." A nurse shot her a look, half disbelief, half relief, and repeated it louder. "Single file, hand on the rail." The pilot followed close behind Lena, his shoulder brushing the frame as he entered. He kept his head turned slightly, listening, not just to alarms now, but to the sound of the stairwell itself. He was learning to hear the building the way she did. They started down. 1 flight. 2. At the second landing, Lena stopped. The line behind her tightened, bodies pressing closer than they should. A gurney wheel bumped the step edge with a dull thud. Someone muttered, irritated. Lena held up her hand. The line halted. She tilted her head, listening. From below, faint but real, came the scrape of metal and the distant echo of pounding. Not footsteps, not people, something mechanical, shifting. The stairwell door at the next landing was slightly ajar. It should have been closed. The pilot noticed it too. That door. "Stay behind the line," Lena said, not looking back. "Nobody goes through." A nurse near the front whispered, "Is there smoke down there?" Lena didn't answer with reassurance. She answered with action. She reached into the pocket of her scrubs and pulled out a small penlight. Cheap, ordinary, something anyone might carry. She flicked it on and aimed it downward. The beam cut through the air. It didn't show smoke, but it showed movement, dust disturbed, swirling in a slow, unsettled pattern. Airflow, a pressure change. The fire wasn't in the stairwell yet. But the building was pulling air from somewhere, like lungs trying to breathe through a narrowing throat. Lena stepped forward 1 pace and pushed the ajar door shut with the flat of her hand. It latched. The dust swirl calmed slightly. A small correction. A small delay bot. "Keep moving," she said. They went down another flight. That's when the first real complication hit. A respiratory therapist, carrying a portable oxygen cylinder and guiding a nurse with a vented patient, stumbled. The tank's base caught on a stair edge. The therapist grabbed it before it fell, but the movement jolted the ventilator tubing. The patient's portable vent alarm screamed. A higher, more urgent sound than the building's alarms. The nurse froze. "He's desatting," she said, voice cracking. "His saturation is dropping." The line behind them began to compress again. Panic made people move closer. Lena moved in immediately, sliding past a shoulder and dropping to a knee beside the patient. The patient's face was partially obscured by the mask, eyes half open, skin already pale. Lena's hands went to the tubing first, not the patient. She checked connections with quick, precise touches. Then she checked the oxygen tank valve. It was open, but not enough. She turned it, 2 controlled twists increasing flow. The alarm softened slightly but didn't stop. "Bag him," Lena said. The nurse blinked. "What?" Bag, now, Lena repeated, calm but absolute. The nurse fumbled for the bag valve mask kit attached to the gurney. Her hands shook. The pilot stepped closer instinctively, eyes on the equipment. What do you need? Lena didn't look up. Hold the line, she said. He hesitated, used to being the hands in the emergency, not the barrier. Lena finally looked up at him. Her eyes were steady, flat, not pleading. Don't let them stack on top of us, she said. He nodded once and turned. He stepped into the narrow stairwell space, raised both hands, not dramatic, just visible, and said in a firm, controlled voice that cut through the noise, "Stop where you are. Give them room. One step back." Now, people obeyed because the tone sounded like command without panic. The line loosened. Space returned. Lena guided the nurse's hands on the bag valve mask. "Seal the mask," she said. 2-second squeeze. Watch the chest rise. Don't overventilate. The nurse nodded, tears gathering in her eyes, but her hands began to move in rhythm. The patient's color improved by degrees. The alarm eased into a less frantic pitch. The respiratory therapist crouched beside them, breathing hard. "We can't do this for long," they whispered. "Battery S at half." Lena nodded as if she'd already calculated it. "We're not staying in the stairwell," she said. "We're clearing to clean air and then reassessing." A voice above them shouted, "Smoke, S coming down." The line behind the pilot stirred again. Lena felt the crowds shift, the way panic vibrated through the stairwell like electricity. She looked upward. A faint haze had appeared at the top landing, barely visible in the emergency lighting, but the smell was there now. Sharp, real, the fire was finding roots, testing seals, following airflow. The pilot looked down at Lena. "We have to move," he said, urgency rising again. "We are moving," Lena replied. She waited until the patient's vent stabilized enough to transition back from manual bagging. Then she stood, wiping her gloved hands once on her scrub leg as if she could erase time. "Keep him upright," she told the nurse. "You do not stop unless I tell you." They moved again, faster now but still controlled. At the next landing, Lena pushed the stairwell door open and froze for half a beat. The corridor beyond was lit by emergency lights too, but the air was different. There was a faint grayness near the floor. Smoke, not thick, not yet choking, but present enough to change the decision. A nurse behind Lena whispered, "No, no, no, no." The pilot stepped up. "We can push through," he said. "It's light." Lena shook her head once. "It's a trap." He stared. "What?" She pointed without looking dramatic. "See how it's pooling low? That means the corridor is pulling air. We go in and we feed it. We also pull it toward our patients." The pilot's jaw tightened. "Then where?" Lena's eyes went to the stairwell map sign mounted on the wall. It listed floors and exits. One of them, a lower-level service exit, connected to an exterior loading area. Not the main public exit. Not the lobby. A route designed for supplies and staff. A route designed for movement without crowds. She pressed the stairwell door back closed, sealing the smoke out. The line behind them groaned in frustration and fear. "We can't keep going down forever," someone said. "We're not," Lena replied, loud enough to be heard now, but still controlled. "We're switching exits." The charge nurse, who had been trying to keep up, breathed out sharply. "That service exit puts us near mechanical," she said. "That's where the fire might be." Lena met her eyes. "Which is why we approach it like it's hostile," she said. "We don't rush. We don't open doors blindly. We test, we listen." The charge nurse swallowed, then nodded. "Okay." The pilot stared at Lena. "Hostile," he repeated quietly, like the word didn't belong in a hospital. Lena didn't explain it. She moved down one more flight, then stopped at the landing marked for the service exit. The door here was heavier, reinforced. A red sign warned, "Authorized personnel only." Lena's badge would likely open it. That wasn't the issue. The issue was what might be on the other side. She crouched, placed her hand near the bottom seam without touching it, and waited. She watched the dust. She felt the air against her skin. She listened for a roar, a crackle, a rush of oxygen being pulled. Nothing loud, but something faint, like a distant, hungry breathing. Lena looked back at the line of staff and patients behind her. This was the moment where a wrong choice killed people quickly. Not heroically, not dramatically, just quickly. She took a breath through her nose, shallow, controlled. Then she stood and looked at the pilot. I need you to do something, she said, his eyes sharpened. Tell me. Hold them, Lena said, nodding to the line. Keep them calm, keep them quiet. If they start shouting, they start rushing. He hesitated. What are you going to do? Lena turned back to the door. What I should have been allowed to do 10 minutes ago, she said. She tapped her badge. Green light, the lock clicked. Lena did not swing the door open. She cracked it 2 inches, just enough to let air speak first. A thin draft slid through the gap, tugging at her sleeve. And with it came the first true wave of heat, not the warmth of a vent, heat with teeth. The pilot, watching over her shoulder, felt it too. His expression changed, no longer theoretical. Lena closed the door again immediately. The line behind her murmured, fear rising. The charge nurse whispered, Lena. Lena stayed calm. She looked down at her burned glove line where the heat had kissed it through the crack. Then she said, quietly to herself as much as to them, we're running out of time. Heat behind a door was one thing, heat with a draft was another. It meant the fire was active in that space, drawing air the way a starving animal drew scent. It meant opening wrong could turn a controlled route into a chimney. It meant a single panicked push could feed oxygen and make the fire lunge. Lena kept her palm on the doorframe, not to comfort herself to measure. Everyone stays back, she said. The pilot repeated it immediately, voice firm, stay back, give her space. The line obeyed, but fear moved through them anyway, restless and searching for somewhere to land. You could see it in small things, hands gripping rails tighter, nurses checking phones as if a text could solve smoke, a family member whispering prayers. The charge nurse stepped closer, her voice low. We can't go through that exit. We can, Lena replied. We just can't go through it like a crowd. She looked at the respiratory therapist with the keys. Do you have a smoke hood? The therapist blinked. For what? For a child, Lena said, and the words landed heavy. The therapist hesitated. We have emergency hoods in the supply locker by. Get one, Lena said. Now, 2 people, don't go alone. The therapist started to argue, then saw Lena's face and stopped. They nodded and moved, pulling a second staff member with them. The pilot frowned. A child? He asked. Lena's eyes flicked to him. Ped's room, she said. Someone said Bay 12 had a family member. There's a pediatric overflow room off this wing. If smoke spreads, it becomes a trap. The pilot's jaw tightened. Then we get them out. That's the plan, Lena said, but we do it without creating more victims. She turned to the charge nurse. Who's assigned to that pediatric room? The nurse swallowed. Nurse Maya. Maya, Lena repeated, already scanning the faces in the line. Where is she? A hand lifted shakily. A young nurse, smudged mascara, hair escaping her cap, stepped forward. Her eyes were bright with fear and stubbornness. I'm here, Maya said. The child's in room P3. He's immunocompromised. He's on oxygen. His mom went to the bathroom and her voice cracked. I can't leave him. Lena stepped closer. You're not leaving him, she said. Maya's breath hitched. Then I'm going back now. You're not going back alone, Lena replied. Maya's eyes flashed. I don't have time to wait for. You have time to do it right, Lena said, and her voice stayed calm enough to make Maya feel how close she was to losing control. Maya looked at the door again, the one Lena had cracked and closed. That's heat. That's fire. Yes, Lena said. So what are you saying? Maya demanded. That we just, abandon him? Lena held her gaze. I'm saying we don't trade one child for 2 staff, she said. If you run in there, you'll collapse in smoke, and then someone else will run in after you. That's how bodies pile up in hospitals. Maya's eyes filled. Then what do we do? Lena turned slightly, scanning the corridor layout from memory. There's a secondary access to that room, she said. Service passage behind the supply closets. It's narrow, it's ugly. It's cleaner air because it's not connected to the main corridor. The charge nurse frowned. That passage is locked. Lena's badge would open it. She didn't say that. She looked at the pilot. I need you again, she said. He stepped forward. Tell me. You're going to stay with the line, Lena said. And you're going to keep them quiet. No shouting, no rushing. If smoke hits this stairwell, we move immediately. You'll hear the change in the air before you see it. The pilot blinked, then nodded. Okay. Maya stared at Lena. And me? You're coming with me, Lena said. And one more person. Who? Maya asked, already trembling. Lena looked along the staff, choosing with her eyes. She picked the respiratory therapist who had stabilized the vented patient earlier, steady hands, focused face. You, Lena said, you're with us. The therapist's eyes widened. Me? Yes, Lena replied. You have the best chance of keeping the child breathing if his oxygen fails. Bring the hood, bring a portable tank. Light load only. The therapist swallowed hard and nodded. The line behind them stirred, whispers rising. The attending doctor stepped closer, face tight. Where are you going? He demanded. Lena met his eyes. To bring back a patient, she said. That's not. He stopped himself, glanced at the door again, then back at Lena. It's not safe. No, Lena agreed. It's controlled. The attending's jaw clenched. This isn't your job. Lena didn't argue with that either. She simply said, then stop me. He didn't. He looked away. Lena turned and moved fast now, not running, but with clipped urgency, down the side corridor into a narrow passage behind supply closets. The air here was cooler, but the walls vibrated faintly with the building's alarms. Pipes ran along the ceiling. The lighting was uneven, harsh. They reached a locked service door. Lena tapped her badge. Green, the door clicked open. Maya's eyes widened. She stared at Lena's badge like it had just become a weapon. You, how? Maya whispered. Move, Lena said, and pushed the door open just enough for them to slip through. Inside, the service passage was tight, the kind of corridor that smelled of cardboard and cleaning chemicals. Old boxes stacked against one wall, a mop bucket tucked into a corner. Lena lifted her penlight and aimed it forward. Ahead, another door, unmarked, plain, led into the pediatric room's back access. Lena stopped, placed her hand near the seam. No heat. Good, but there was another problem. The air felt thin, a faint haze. Smoke had found its way in here too, just lightly enough to be dangerous for a child. Maya's breath quickened. We need to hurry. We will, Lena said, but we don't blow the door open. She looked at the respiratory therapist. Hood ready? The therapist nodded, hands shaking as they unfolded the emergency hood. Lena looked at Maya. When we go in, you do not scream, you do not freeze. You take the child, you wrap him, you keep his head protected. If the mother appears, you do not argue, you tell her to follow or you leave her behind. Maya stared at her, stunned. Leave her behind. If she fights you, Lena said quietly, she delays the child, you choose the child. Maya's face twisted with horror. That was the moral tension, raw, real, unavoidable. Lena didn't soften it. This is what triage is, she said. Not paperwork, choice. Maya swallowed, tears sliding down. Okay, she whispered. Lena cracked the door, just an inch, letting air exchange slowly. The pediatric room beyond was dim, lit by emergency lights. The child lay in a small hospital bed, eyes wide, oxygen cannula taped to his cheeks. He was maybe 7, too thin, too quiet. His hands clenched around a blanket like it was the only stable thing in the world. When he saw Maya, his mouth opened, but no sound came out. Maya rushed forward instinctively. Lena caught her wrist, 2 fingers, light restraint. Slow, Lena murmured. You scare him, he panics, he breathes faster. Maya blinked, then slowed, forcing herself to move gently. The respiratory therapist stepped in with the hood and the portable tank, moving as quietly as possible. Lena entered last and closed the door behind them softly, sealing the service passage. Inside, the air smelled faintly of smoke now. It was getting worse. The child's eyes were locked on Lena, not Maya. Children sensed the calmest person in the room. They clung to it. Lena crouched beside the bed, voice low. Hi, she said. We're going to walk you out. You're going to wear something that makes the air clean. It's going to look strange, but it's okay. The child's lower lip trembled. He nodded once. Maya's hands shook as she reached for him. Sweetheart, I'm here. The door to the room suddenly rattled. A pounding from the other side. Maya, a woman's voice cried, high, frantic. Maya, where is my son? Maya froze, her face went white. It's his mom, she whispered. The pounding came again. Open the door, please. The child's eyes widened in fear. His breathing quickened. The respiratory therapist muttered, smoke if we open that door. Lena's mind moved fast, coldly. She pictured the corridor outside. The smoke, the heat, the crowd. Maya looked at Lena, pleading. We can't leave her. Lena stared at the door. This was the choice. Open it and risk smoke flooding the room, risk panic, risk losing the child's oxygen. Leave it closed and carry the weight of abandoning a mother in chaos. Lena felt something tighten behind her ribs, not fear, not exactly. The cost. She stood. She walked to the door. She placed her hand on the latch, and she made the decision. Lena didn't swing the door open. She turned the latch slowly, cracked it a fraction, and used her body as the seal, shoulder angled, foot braced, allowing only a narrow slice of air to pass. A woman's face appeared in the gap, eyes wild, hair loose, a hospital visitor sticker crooked on her chest. "My son," the woman choked out. "I have him," Lena said, calm and quiet, like she was speaking into a storm and refusing to be swallowed by it. "Listen to me. If you push this door open, smoke comes in. Your son panics. He breathes faster. He loses oxygen, you understand?" The woman's mouth trembled. "Please, please just let me." "You can follow," Lena said, "but you do exactly what I say. No screaming, no grabbing. If you don't, you stay here." The bluntness landed like a slap. The woman stared at Lena as if trying to decide if she hated her. Then she looked past Lena's shoulder and saw her son in the bed, wide-eyed tiny, already wearing the edge of fear. Her rage collapsed into terror. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, tell me." Lena opened the door just enough to slip the woman inside, then closed it again immediately, sealing the room. The woman stumbled forward, hands shaking, reaching for her child. Maya stepped between them gently. "Ma'am, hold on." The mother's voice rose. "That's my..." Lena's eyes snapped to her, not angry, absolute. The mother stopped mid-word. The child's breathing was too fast now, chest fluttering. The nasal cannula tugged at his cheeks. The portable oxygen hissed softly, but the room's air carried that faint smoke taste stronger than before. They were out of time. "Mask first," Lena said to the respiratory therapist. The therapist moved, unfolding the emergency smoke hood with trembling fingers. The hood was clear plastic with a filter and a soft collar. It looked like something from a disaster drill that no one ever believed would happen. The child stared at it, frightened. Lena crouched beside him again. "It's like a bubble," she said. "It makes the air clean. You're going to breathe through it and feel better." The child's eyes flicked to his mother. The mother grabbed his hand, tears spilling. "Baby, please do it, please." The therapist slid the hood over the child's head carefully, the collar sealed around his neck. The child flinched, but Lena kept her hand lightly on his forearm, steady contact, not restraining, anchoring. The child took one breath inside the hood, then another. His chest slowed by degrees. The alarm in Lena's mind eased just slightly. "Okay," Lena said. "Maya, you lift, I'll guide. We move now." Maya nodded, jaw clenched, tears still on her cheeks. The mother stepped forward, frantic again. "I'm carrying him?" "No," Lena said. The mother froze, offended through fear. "What?" "You're following," Lena replied. "If you carry him and you fall, you block the corridor. You don't get to make this about your feelings. You make it about his survival." The mother stared at her, hatred flickering. Then she nodded, defeated by reality. "Okay." They moved the child, small body wrapped tight, hood sealed, portable oxygen in the therapist's hand. Lena opened the back service door and led them into the narrow passage. The air there was hazier now, not thick but present. The building was bleeding smoke through seams. "Low voices," Lena said. "No running." They reached the secured door to the stairwell line and slipped through. The moment Lena opened it, noise hit them. Alarms louder, voices echoing, panic pressing against the stairwell walls like water behind a dam. And the smell was worse. Smoke had entered the upper levels. It wasn't here in choking volume yet, but it was coming. At the landing, the pilot stood like a human barricade, arms out, controlling the line with blunt authority. His voice was firm, controlled, no longer trying to be the hero, just trying to keep space. "Back up," he told staff. "Give them room. Move one step at a time." When he saw Lena emerge with the child, his expression shifted, shock and recognition in one. "You got him," he said quietly. Lena didn't stop moving. "We're relocating him to clean air," she said. "Where's the charge nurse?" "2 landings up," the pilot answered. "They're stacked." Smoke coming down from the top. Lena's eyes flicked upward. The haze was visible now at the higher landing, drifting down. The stairwell was becoming a funnel. The pilot stepped closer, voice low. Fire command is in the lobby. They're trying to get control of the system. Security says doors are locking unpredictably. Lena's jaw tightened. Then we don't rely on doors. She turned to the mother. Stay on Maya's shoulder, she said. You do not break the line. The mother nodded, sobbing silently now. Lena looked at the pilot. We're going down, she said. Service exit is hot. We can't use it. We need a lateral cross, another stairwell. The pilot frowned. There's a cross corridor on the mezzanine. Compromised, Lena cut in. He hesitated. Then what? Lena looked at the stairwell signage. Floors, exits. A notation for a fire tower stairwell on the opposite side of the building, designed to stay sealed longer. It required crossing a short corridor on a lower floor, one that might still be clean. Might. This was where decisions turned into gambles. Lena lifted her penlight again and aimed down the stairwell. 2 floors down, she said. We cross to the fire tower stairwell. It's built to hold longer. We move the critical patients first. The charge nurse appeared above, face streaked with sweat, eyes scanning. Lena, she shouted. Lena's voice stayed calm even as she raised it. We're switching stairwells. This one is pulling smoke from above. We need the fire tower on the west side. The charge nurse's expression tightened. Do we have confirmation it's clear? Lena looked up at her. No, she said. But we have confirmation this one won't stay clear. The charge nurse stared at her for a beat, the kind of stare that weighed liability, protocol, fear. Then she nodded. Okay, do it. That was the closest thing to permission Lena would ever ask for. They moved down. The stairwell line shifted like a slow animal, reluctant but guided. The pilot's presence helped, his voice holding the crowd's attention, his body blocking surges. He learned quickly. When Lena raised her hand, he mirrored it. When she spoke low, he spoke low. 2 floors down, Lena pushed the stairwell door open, slow, controlled. The corridor beyond was dim and empty, emergency lighting casting long shadows. For a moment, it looked clean. Then Lena's penlight caught the air. A thin veil of smoke, higher up, near the ceiling, drifting laterally. Still breathable, but warning. Keep heads low, Lena said. Move steady, don't talk. They moved the child first, hood sealed. Maya carried him carefully. The therapist held the oxygen. The mother followed, hand gripping Maya's sleeve like she might fall off the world. Lena walked ahead, penlight sweeping for hazards. Halfway across, the corridor's far door, leading to the fire tower stairwell, refused to open. A locked handle, a dead latch. The hospital's automatic containment systems had engaged here too. The line behind them began to compress. A cough. A shout. Doors locked. Someone cried, voice rising toward panic. The pilot turned, eyes flashing. Stay calm, but calm was thinning like oxygen. Lena stepped to the door and tested it once, firm pressure, not yanking, no movement. She glanced at the keypad. No green light this time. The badge reader flashed red, denied. For the first time since the crisis began, something didn't give her access. The pilot saw it. It won't open. Lena didn't answer immediately. Her mind ran contingencies, alternative route, forced entry, break glass, find mechanical override. Smoke drifted thicker now, creeping lower. A nurse behind her started coughing hard. The corridor was becoming a trap. This was the final confrontation, not with a person but with the building itself. Locks, smoke, pressure time. The pilot stepped closer, voice tight. What do we do? Lena stared at the door. Then she looked at the small panel beside it, an emergency release cover, painted to match the wall, meant for fire command, not staff. Most people didn't even know it existed. Lena did. She pulled her pen from her pocket, slid it into the seam, and popped the cover open with a controlled twist. Inside, a manual override lever and a sealed tag. The pilot's eyes widened. How did you? Lena didn't look at him. She pulled the tag with a sharp motion. The lever clicked, the latch released, the door opened. Air from the fire tower stairwell poured out, cooler, cleaner, like salvation. The line surged forward in relief. Lena held up her hand, stopping the surge just enough to keep order. One at a time, she said. Don't block the doorway. The pilot repeated it instantly, voice steady. One at a time, don't block. They funneled through, and as the last patient crossed into the fire tower stairwell, Lena stepped back into the corridor for one beat and pulled the door shut behind them. She sealed the smoke out. The click of the latch sounded final. Inside the stairwell, the air was cleaner. The noise was still loud, but it had shape again. People could breathe. The child's hooded breaths were steady. The mother collapsed against the wall, sobbing quietly, hands pressed to her mouth. Maya stared at Lena, shaking. You knew that panel was there." Lena didn't answer. The pilot stood close now, watching her like she was a map he hadn't realized he needed until he was lost. Down below, voices echoed, new voices, disciplined and clipped, firefighters moving upward, calling out zones, communicating in code. Fire command had arrived in force. One firefighter appeared at the landing, helmet light cutting through the stairwell. He saw Lena, saw the line, and his body language shifted, recognition without words. He stepped closer, voice loud but controlled. "Who's running this movement?" The charge nurse opened her mouth. The pilot opened his. Lena didn't. She simply stepped back, letting herself disappear into gray scrubs again, letting the spotlight fall where it usually fell. But the firefighter's eyes stayed on her. He nodded once, subtle, almost private. "Good work," he said, and there was something in the tone that didn't sound like gratitude. It sounded like respect reserved for someone trained. Then he turned to his team. "Seal this stairwell, move the remaining floors, prioritize critical." The crisis shifted from chaos to operation. The building still burned, but it was no longer in control. The moment the firefighters took the stairwell, the sound changed. It wasn't quieter. If anything, it got louder, but it became structured. Commands replaced questions. Footsteps moved with purpose. Radios crackled with clipped phrases that carried certainty. "Zone C clear. Smoke pushing east. Hold that door. Ventilation adjustment in progress." The hospital stopped feeling like a panicked organism and started feeling like a contained incident. People began to realize they could breathe again. That realization came with its own kind of collapse. A nurse sat down on a stair and put her head in her hands, shaking. Another leaned against the wall and laughed once, sharp and broken, like the body releasing what it couldn't hold. The mother of the child clutched Maya's sleeve and sobbed into it, whispering, "Thank you," over and over as if repetition could keep her son alive. The child, hood still on, stared upward through clear plastic, eyes following helmet lights that moved like small moons. Lena stayed standing. Not because she was stronger, because she was still counting. Firefighters moved past her, up and down, their gear brushing the stairwell walls. One of them, a lieutenant, paused at the landing and spoke to the charge nurse. "We're isolating the fire below mechanical," he said. "Smoke is being pulled through multiple shafts. Your reroute kept people away from the worst of it." The charge nurse swallowed, voice raw. "We didn't do it alone." The lieutenant nodded. His eyes flicked across the group and landed on Lena, gray scrubs, quiet posture, shoulders relaxed but ready. He didn't ask for her name. He didn't need to. He turned back to his team and kept moving. The charge nurse stepped toward Lena, lowering her voice. "Are you hurt?" Lena flexed her fingers once, checking sensation. The skin at her wrist was slightly reddened from the heat she'd tested at the service exit. Not a dramatic burn, a warning mark. "I'm fine," Lena said. The charge nurse looked at her like she didn't believe that anymore. "What the hell was that back there?" The nurse asked quietly. "The panel, the lever, you were talking like." Lena cut her off with a small shake of her head. Not denial, not refusal, a boundary. "People are alive," Lena said. "That's what matters." The charge nurse's eyes filled for a second, then she wiped her face with the back of her hand like she didn't have time to be human. "Administration's coming," she muttered. "They'll want reports, statements, they'll want someone to blame," Lena finished softly. The charge nurse stared. "Yeah." Lena didn't say anything else. Below them, the stairwell door opened again, and another wave of staff came through guided by firefighters, more wheelchairs, more patients wrapped in blankets, more faces pale under emergency lighting. The corridor routes were being controlled now, but the smell of smoke still drifted faintly. The building was still in danger. The danger had just been boxed. The pilot stood near the wall, one hand pressed to the stairwell rail as if grounding himself. His cut had started bleeding again. He hadn't noticed. His eyes followed Lena constantly now, not with suspicion but with something close to awe and confusion that made him look younger than he had earlier. When the flow slowed, he stepped closer. Lena, he said. She turned her head slightly. Yes, he swallowed. You saved that kid. I moved him, Lena replied. Maya did the carrying. That's not what I mean, he said, voice tight. You made decisions faster than anyone else. You knew what doors to close, what corridors would choke. You knew that override panel existed. Lena looked past him to where firefighters were still moving. It's over, she said. It's not over, he insisted, quieter now, as if he'd learned volume wouldn't move her. You're not who you said you were. I'm an aide, Lena said. He shook his head slowly. No. You're an aide the way I'm a guy who sits in a chair. It's technically true, but it's not the point. Lena didn't react. Her face stayed calm. The pilot leaned in slightly. Were you military? He asked, voice low. Federal something. The way you talked, task loading, crowd control? Stop, Lena said gently. It wasn't anger. It was fatigue. The pilot froze mid-breath. Lena met his eyes fully now. There was something in her gaze that didn't invite more questions. It didn't threaten. It simply stated that this line would not be crossed. The pilot's voice softened. Okay, he whispered. Then, why are you here? Lena held his gaze for a second longer than necessary. Then she looked away. Because this place needs people who do the work, she said. He stared at her, then nodded slowly, as if he'd been given an answer that wasn't satisfying but was real. At the top landing, the attending doctor appeared, shoulders slumped, coat smudged, face drawn. He moved down 2 steps, looking for someone to direct his anger toward. His eyes found Lena, and his expression shifted. He had seen her earlier, an aide in gray scrubs stepping into a corridor like she belonged there. He approached, voice quieter than before. Who authorized you to open restricted doors? The charge nurse tensed beside Lena, ready to intervene. Lena didn't. She turned to the doctor. The building was on fire, she said simply. The doctor's jaw tightened. He looked like he wanted to argue about protocol, about access, about chain of command, but he couldn't argue with outcomes. He swallowed. You didn't get anyone killed, he said. It wasn't praise, it was a concession. Lena nodded once. The doctor's eyes narrowed. How do you have access to those doors? Lena didn't answer. The attending held her gaze, then looked away, frustrated by the absence of a handle to grab. He moved back up the stairs to deal with the rest of the disaster. The pilot watched him go, then looked back at Lena. They're going to ask, he said quietly. I know, Lena replied. Down below, footsteps echoed again, different now, not firefighters, shoes that clicked too sharply. Voices that tried to sound calm but carried fear of liability. Administration. A woman in a blazer appeared at the bottom landing, hair pinned perfectly despite the smoke. She looked up the stairwell like she was walking into a scene that would become a report. Is everyone accounted for? She called. The charge nurse stepped forward, voice hoarse. We're still moving patients. Fire command is in control. Critical are stabilized. The administrator's gaze swept the stairwell and landed on Lena. Who are you? The woman asked. Lena didn't step forward. She didn't step back. She answered the only thing that was safely true. Lena, patient care aide. The administrator looked like she didn't believe her. The pilot almost spoke, almost offered the story, almost gave Lena a spotlight she didn't want. Lena's eyes flicked to him once. A quiet warning. The pilot closed his mouth. The administrator's voice tightened. We're going to need statements from everyone involved. Security says someone accessed restricted zones. The charge nurse inhaled sharply, ready to defend Lena. Lena lifted a hand, small, controlled, stopping her. I'll give a statement, Lena said. Calm, flat. After the last patient is moved. The administrator frowned. That may not be your decision. Lena looked at her, calm enough to be unsettling. It is, she said, not as a challenge, as a fact. The administrator held her gaze for a beat, then looked away, unsettled by something she couldn't name. Firefighters moved another gurney past. The flow continued. The hospital still smelled like smoke and fear and burned wiring, but the people were moving. And Lena, still in gray scrubs, still refusing attention, stood at the side of the stairwell like a quiet piece of structure. Holding, counting, waiting for the moment she could disappear again. 3 days later, the hospital smelled like bleach again. Not the comforting kind, sharp, overused, trying too hard to erase what had happened. The scorched odor still lived in certain corners if you knew where to stand. A faint burn behind the elevators, a bitter hint in the lower stairwell. A discoloration near the mechanical access door where heat had licked the paint and left a permanent bruise. People talked about the fire in short bursts, then stopped. The story moved through the building the way rumors always did, distorted, simplified, assigned to the wrong names. Some said it started in a transformer room. Others swore it was a trash compactor. There were memos now, protocol reminders, evacuation flowcharts, polite instructions written by people who hadn't stood in smoke. A new laminated map had been hung near the nurses' station, brighter and more official than the old one. Lena noticed the map first thing when she came in. She didn't look at it like a trophy. She looked at it like a mechanic inspecting a repaired engine. The arrows were too optimistic. She reached out and pressed a finger to one of the routes, main corridor to lobby, then lifted her hand away without comment. Her wrist still showed a faint red mark where heat had kissed through her glove. It wasn't painful anymore. It was simply there, like a signature. She clocked in quietly. Gray scrubs again, hair tied back, no radio, no title shift. The same badge with her first name only. On the board, her assignment was ordinary. Transport assistance, linen rotation, patient repositioning. No mention of incident response. No mention of evacuation lead. Hospitals didn't like stories that made them look dependent on someone outside the hierarchy. That was fine. Lena didn't need the story. At the first break in the shift, she walked to a supply closet and restocked gloves without being asked. She checked the wheelchairs in the hall and made sure none of them were wedged behind boxes again. She moved the crash cart half a foot to keep the gurney lane clean. Small motions, quiet corrections. In the cafeteria, staff spoke about the fire the way people spoke about weather that had passed. It could have been so much worse, someone said, staring into coffee. It was the fire department, another replied. They saved us. A third person leaned in. You know what I heard. Someone opened restricted doors, like bypassed lockdown. Security was furious, someone else added. They're auditing access now. Lena sat alone at the edge of a table and ate a plain sandwich without looking up, not because she didn't hear, because she did. And she knew the building's memory was already being rewritten. When she returned to the floor, she found the pilot waiting near the nurse's station. He looked out of place now without the alarms. His cut was bandaged properly. His uniform shirt was gone, replaced by a dark sweater. But the wings were still pinned there, as if he couldn't leave them behind. He stood with both hands in his pockets, posture stiff, eyes scanning the corridor the way he had during the crisis, like he expected the walls to move again. When he saw Lena, he stepped forward. Lena, he said quietly. She stopped. You're still here. I came back, he said, to say something. Lena waited. She didn't invite him. She didn't push him away. The pilot exhaled. They told me to file a patient feedback report, he said, almost bitter. As if what happened could fit into a box with 5 stars. Lena's face didn't change. He swallowed. I asked who you were. They said you're an aide. That's all they'd say. Lena nodded once. That's all you need. He studied her. No, it's not. He paused, then lowered his voice further. You didn't just help, you ran it. Quietly, you made a building behave. Lena's gaze went past him to the corridor, to the fire doors, to the exit signs. She watched a nurse push a medication cart without urgency, like the world hadn't nearly turned. I moved people, Lena said. The pilot shook his head slowly, as if she was refusing to admit something obvious. I know command, he said. I know panic. What you did, he stopped, searching for words that didn't sound like worship. It was discipline. Lena's eyes returned to him, calm, heavy. That's not a compliment, she said quietly. It's a requirement. He stared at her, then nodded, understanding without fully understanding. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He held it toward her. What is it? She asked. My flight number, he said, and a note, in case you ever need anything, a seat, a way out. His voice tightened slightly. You mapped exits like you've needed one before. Lena looked at the paper but didn't take it yet. The pilot held it there, hand steady, waiting. Lena finally reached out and took it between 2 fingers, not because she needed it, because refusing it would create a scene. She tucked it into her scrub pocket without unfolding it. The pilot's eyes flicked to her wrist, faint redness. You got hurt, he said. Lena shrugged, minimal. Everyone did. He swallowed again, then nodded. I'm sorry, he said. About earlier, I treated you like background. Lena held his gaze. Most people do, she replied. He looked down, ashamed. Lena's voice softened just a fraction. It doesn't matter, she said. Not compared to what mattered. The pilot nodded, then hesitated. Will they come after you for the doors? Lena's expression didn't change. They'll write a policy, she said. They'll audit access. They'll pretend it was always handled. The pilot frowned. That's wrong. Lena's gaze remained calm. It's predictable. He stared at her as if he wanted to argue. Then he seemed to understand something he didn't like. You don't want credit, he said softly. Lena didn't answer directly. She turned her head slightly and looked down the corridor toward the laminated map. Credit makes noise, she said. Noise draws attention. Attention draws questions. And questions, the pilot whispered. Questions make people look for a story, Lena finished. And I'm not here for stories. The pilot held her gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once, like someone acknowledging a runway they hadn't seen until it was right under them. Okay, he said, then I'll leave it. He stepped back, eyes still on her. But thank you, he added, for what you did. Lena nodded once, small. The pilot turned to go, then paused at the intersection where the wall map hung. He looked at it, then at Lena. You checked that thing before anything happened, he said quietly. Lena didn't deny it. She simply said, I always do. The pilot left. Lena walked to the map after he was gone. She stood in front of it, alone in a corridor that had returned to routine. She traced the exit routes with her eyes, counting doors, measuring distance, noting what had changed after the incident. Then she stepped back. She adjusted the linen cart in the hall by a few inches so it wouldn't block a gurney path. And she returned to her work, gray scrubs blending into the building again, quiet, invisible, disciplined. The hospital kept breathing. So did she.